continue tracking the story now, get you some insight with legal analyst Nthabiseng Dubazana. Nthabiseng, thanks as always for your time. Our reporter Mweli telling us about just the length of time that this extradition hearing has taken. In your experience, how hard is it to be successful for the part of South Africa, and get suspects extradited from another country?
I think it usually stems from the situation of the other country, the one that is the host, so to speak, of the persons that we're trying to get back into the country. So our laws, our domestic laws versus their domestic laws, will speak to how the matter would be dealt with, and then it will speak to how the extradition would be done. Because in as much as country A and country B have this extradition agreement, they still have to adhere to their own domestic laws that apply to how they deal with criminal matters. So that's why we hear that the presiding officer, the magistrate in that particular country, in Swaziland to be specific, was saying that he needs X, Y, and Z, and this could not be furnished because it will compromise the investigations within the borders of South Africa. So the bottom line is that if the countries come to a mutual agreement in a amicable way and faster, then we are able to see things that can be done quicker, but also depending on the domestic laws of each country that is part of the agreement of extradition.
Yeah, and we see that, right, with the unsuccessful attempts to extradite the Gupta brothers, for example.
Yes, for example, I think I heard today that a new application was done, wherein now the presiding officer who was hearing the application squarely blames the UAE to say that they are the ones who have not replied to the formal request. They had requested certain information and South Africa complied, and then they were supposed to respond with something else. To this date, they haven't done that. So whatever domestic laws that they are dealing with regard to our application, clearly they're not forthcoming with what they are doing on their side, thus putting us in a position where we can be deemed to be stagnant when it comes to that application, whereas it's not South Africa's wrongdoing in this situation. It is the country with its own domestic laws, how they choose to deal with that vis-a-vis the extradition agreement between the two countries.
I'm going to get back to the issue of the Ndimande brothers in just a moment, Nthabiseng. I want to just talk about just the number of extradition cases we've had in court recently. The Gupta brothers, one of them. We know the Ndimande brothers, which is the story we're discussing today, but also Moradi Cholota, Ace Magashula's former personal assistant. The issue of extradition is so top of mind at the moment with various court cases and various newsworthy stories. In your experience, is that unusual?
No, really, it's not unusual. In fact, the 2 years that were taken for the Ace Magashula's PA, who now came back after 2 years, that's actually more or less the time frame that we look at. Some are even longer. I know of others that are not even obviously in the media's eye, wherein it's been 10 years since people have been waiting for this person to be brought back to face the music within this particular country. As always, it always boils down to what is happening in that particular country that we are requesting, bring Nthabiseng back from there so that she can face what she did in our country. And then they're like, okay, yes, per our agreement, we will do what you're asking, but please allow us to follow through on our own domestic things. So in the event that Nthabiseng is brought back to South Africa and she faces the music, and then for whatever reason, she's found not guilty, if she chooses to sue the state, so that we also are not included within that, because you could have left me where I was. Here I am facing the music this side, and the state has lost its case against me. So I'm suing not only the state in South Africa, but I'm going to sue the state from where I came from, because you guys do not even follow your own rules on your own laws on how to put me back in this country without following due diligence.
Yeah, fascinating. So let's get back to the Ndimande brothers and the case of the murder of AKA and Tibz. It's now 18 months later since that shock murder happened in February of 2023. There's no clarity as yet. Extradition has been granted. No clarity as yet on when exactly it will happen. So when are those kinds of decisions made?
So it will also again, excuse me, it will also again depend on the domestic laws of Swaziland. In terms of, for example, in South Africa, when it comes to Section 49 of the Immigrations Act, there's certain procedures that the Department of Home Affairs would have to follow, and then contact the country of the person who is illegal within the country or has to be deported, whatever the case may be, and then follow that process. it may take a few days, weeks, or months. So perhaps I'm assuming, apart from the fact that there's an appeal that could be done because they have that option, apart from that, I'm sure that they now have to now liaise with the Department of Home Affairs, liaise with South Africa and how to bring them back into the country and all of those things. So we are hoping that all those things can be done within a period of 30 days. It ought not to take that long. But because this matter is the way it's so high profile, perhaps we will be lucky to see everything being done within 30 days.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about 18 months here since the murder of AKA and Tibz. Of course, we've got experience with other high-profile cases that have been in court for much longer than that. 10 years since the Senzumewa murder trial has been ongoing. The hope now is that once the extradition issue is finalized and the brothers arrive back in South Africa, that the case itself will finally get underway.
That's correct. So once they get here, they obviously will be in custody. So now our Criminal Procedure Act now has to kick in. So we're dealing with Section 60, which is basically bail application, see if they're eligible for bail. It's most likely going to be a Schedule 6 bail application. And if they're able to show exceptional circumstances, then they may not be released on bail. And then thereafter, we can wait and see whether the state is ready to proceed and hand over the docket to the accused attorneys, and then the trial can start.